Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janava Girivardhari Gopi Janava Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, Text 7 Tatra Ar Ahritaha Taha Naradeva Kanyaha Kunjena Drishtva Harim Artabandhum Utaya Sadhyaha Jagrihu Praharsha Vrida Anuraga Prahita Avalokai Tatrahritastha Naradeva Kanyaha Kunjena Drishtva Harim Artabandhum Utaya sadyo jagrihu praharsha. Vridanuraga prahritavalokai. Tatrahritasta naradeva kanyaha. Kunjena drishtva harimarta bandhum. Utaya sadyo jagrihu praharsha. Vridanuraga prahritavalokai. Tatrahritasta naradeva kanyaha. Pujena drishtva harimarta bandhum. Utaya sadyo jagrihu praharsha. Vridanuraga prahritavalokahi.
Tathakritasta naradeva kanya
Tatrahritasta naradeva kanya.
Jena drishtva harimarta bandhu
Pujena drishtva harimarta bandhum.
Kaya sajo jagrihu prahasya
Utaya sadyo jagrihu praharsha.
Vidanaraga Mahitavalokai.
Vidhanuraga prahritavalokai.
Tatrahritasta naradeva kanya
Jasta naradeva kanya.
Pujena dishvahare marta bandham Utaya sadyo jagrihu praharsha Vidhanuraga prahitavalokai.
Tatrahritasta naradeva kanya
Deva kanya.
Kujena drishva harimarta bandhu
Ujena yusvahari marta bandham.
Utaya satyo jagrihu praharsha
Utaya sadyo jagrihu praharsha.
Vridanuraga rahitavalokai.
Anuraga prahitavalokai.
Tatra hritasta naradeva kanyaha
Anudeva kanyaha.
Ujena dristva harim arta bandhum
Arta bandhum.
Utaya sadyo jagrahu praharsha
Praharsha.
Ridan raga prahitava lokahai
Anuraga
Tatra hritasta naradeva kanyaha
Sasta Naradeva Kanyaha.
Pujena drishta harimata bandhu
Svanam Harila.
Utaya sadyo jagrihu praharsha
Viharsha.
Vridanuraga pratitavaloka.
Tatra. Inside the house of Narakasura, Ahirtaha, kidnapped, Taha, all those, Naradeva Kanyaha, daughters of many kings, Kujena, by the demon, Drishtva, by seeing, Harim, the Lord, Artabandhum, the friend of the distressed, Utaya at once got up. Sadhya, then and there, Jagrihu accepted. Praharsha, joyfully. Vrida, shyness. Anuraga, attachment. Prahrita avalokai, by eager glances. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There in the house of the demon, all the princesses kidnapped by Narakasura at once became alert upon seeing the Lord, the friend of the distressed. They looked upon him with eagerness, joy, and shyness, and offered to be his wives. Purport: Narakasura kidnapped many daughters of great kings and kept them imprisoned in his palace. But when he was killed by the Lord, and the Lord entered the house of the demon, all the princesses were enlivened with joy and offered to become his wives, because the Lord is the only friend of the distressed. Unless the Lord accepted them, there would be no chance of their being married, because the demon kidnapped them from their father's custody, and therefore no one would agree to marry them. According to Vedic society, girls are transferred from the custody of the father to the custody of the husband. Since these princesses had already been taken away from the custody of their fathers, it would have been difficult for them to have any husband other than the Lord himself. Maharaj, would you like to speak on this? Oh, yeah, I think we read a few texts yesterday, actually. So I thought we had already read that one. Did we read this text and purport? Oh, we just spoke about it. Okay. Should we read another one? Okay, text 8. Asam mahurta ekasmin nanagareshu yoshitam savidham jagrihe panin anurupa svamayaya. Translation: all those princesses were lodged in different apartments, and the Lord simultaneously assumed different bodily expansions, exactly matching each and every princess. He accepted their hands in perfect rituals by his internal potency. Purport: in the Brahma Samhita 533, the Lord is described as follows in regard to his innumerable plenary expansions. Advaitam achutam anadim anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedeshu Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. The Lord Govinda, whom I worship, is the original personality of Godhead. He is none different from his innumerable plenary expansions, who are all infallible, original and unlimited, and who have eternal forms. Although he is primeval, the oldest personality, he is always fresh and young. By his internal potency, the Lord can expand himself into various personalities of Swayam Prakasha, and again into Prabhava and Vaibhava forms, and all of them are non-different from one another. The forms into which the Lord expanded to marry the princesses in different apartments were all slightly different just to match each and every one of them. They are called Vaibhava Vilas forms of the Lord and are affected by his internal potency, Yoga Maya. Would you like to speak on this?
Also explain these princesses were awarded to become the wives of Krishna, and Krishna expanded himself into 16,108 forms of Krishna, and he gave each one their own palace in Dwarka. And each palace was designed specifically with that particular princess, that queen in mind. It was just to her liking. And Krishna acted as though he didn't stay anywhere else but in their house, because they would be disappointed if he were to go away. If he left all the princesses or the wives and only went with one for a day, then it would be very disturbing for the prince. So he stayed with all of them, and they each thought, that Krishna only stays with me if I was a perfect husband.
Thank you, Maharish. So that verse from the Brahma Samhita was describing how Krishna is non-different from his innumerable plenary expansions, who are all infallible, original, and unlimited, and who have eternal forms. So Krishna, he has an eternal form, a spiritual form, made of Satchit Ananda. It's full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. So he's able to perform these extraordinary pastimes that no one else is able to do. We see he accepts 16,000 wives, and he's in each of the palaces with each of the wives. They each have a unique palace, and he's performing different unique activities just suitable to that family situation in each palace. In Narada Muni, we hear in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam and in the Krishna book how Narada Muni is going to each of these palaces, and when he enters one palace, he sees Krishna performing some specific activity. And when he enters, Krishna gets up from that activity and is saying, wow, how amazing that it is that Narada Muni is here blessing us with his association, and he welcomes him very nicely. And afterwards, Narada Muni would go to the next palace, and he sees Krishna there doing a completely different activity with the next queen engaged in a different way in a different palace. And again, Krishna would get up and act like he isn't aware that he just saw Narada Muni before. And he says, wow, Narada Muni is here. And he comes and welcomes him again. And like this, Narada Muni was amazed to see these extraordinary pastimes of the Lord. So this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can expand himself into innumerable forms. And each of them is always a fresh youth, as explained in that verse from the Brahma Samhita. So there's no comparison that the ordinary living entities within this material world who try to claim to be God make it very obvious how foolish they are, because an ordinary living entity has to deal with a toothache and getting old and getting disease and all of these things, whereas the Supreme Lord, he is always a fresh youth. So it's quite apparent if someone's claiming to be God that they're not God, because they still have to deal with this material body, which is so cumbersome, where we see Krishna is always enjoying in his fresh, youthful pastimes. And he can maintain 16,108 wives and accept all of them. And it's a pure arrangement, whereas the living entities in this world have difficulty maintaining even one wife, almost impossible. But for Krishna, there's no difficulty in maintaining not only 16,108 wives, but all the living entities. He explains in the Bhagavad Gita that I'm seated in the hearts of all the living entities, and I'm giving them remembrance and forgetfulness. So he's in the heart of all living entities, and he is actually guiding them. That's how all the living entities are eating, being maintained, such as the elephants who eat tons of food, or the birds who know where to go to get their food right when they're born. Krishna is maintaining all of them. So if an ordinary living entity who can't even maintain one bathroom or one living space, it claims to be the Supreme Lord himself, it's very foolish. And we're hearing how The Lord has Vaibhava vilas forms, and they are affected by his internal potency, Yoga Maya. So the conditioned living entities in this material world are affected by Maha Maya, which causes them to be in the illusion that Ishvaraham Aham Bhogi, I'm the enjoyer, I'm the controller, I'm supreme and happy and powerful, I'm the center of everything. This is called Maha Maya, this great illusion, thinking that I am this body, Aham Ameti, and everything in relation to this body is mine. But the spiritual associates of the Lord are under a different kind of illusion. They're under Yoga Maya, which facilitates Krishna's pastimes and facilitates their loving relationship with Krishna. So they also sometimes are not seeing that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this way, they're covered by a type of illusion which increases their service to Krishna so that they can see, actually, this person is my son, I have to protect him, I have to cook for him, or this person is my friend, I have to deal with him in this certain way. And in this way, the devotees of the Lord and the Lord are acting in a way that is very pleasing to each other. But that is all for Krishna's pleasure, whereas the illusion in this material world keeps the living entities who want to be rebellious of the Lord and forgetful of their natural position as an eternal servant of the Lord. It keeps them in a suffering condition. So if one wants to try to lord it over this material world, which is what everyone in the material world is doing, then they try in this hard struggle for existence to control nature and become the center, become the enjoyer. Krishna has his many different energies, like we're hearing these different queens and all these different energies of the Lord that facilitate his enjoyment. So when the rebellious or envious living entities come to this material world, they try to accumulate their energies. I remember Parmeshwar Prabhu was explaining how the conditioned souls try to imitate the Supreme Lord. And when they don't want to see Krishna in the center and they don't want to facilitate Krishna's enjoyment, he was giving this example how they come to this material world, and once they're here, they look around and they think they're the center, and then they say, "Where's my Radharani?" And like this, they try to find their eternal consort and enact their so-called eternal pastimes, and it just becomes very foolish. So after being embarrassed in this material world, life after life, by the stringent laws of material nature, the living entities can come to their senses after many, many births of endeavoring to come to perfection. They can come to their senses and realize, oh, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'll find the verse where Krishna is speaking about that. Okay, here it is. In Bhagavad Gita 6:45. Prayatnad yatamanastu yogi samshuddha kilbashaha aneka janma samsiddhas tato yati param gatim. Oh, that wasn't the one I was looking for. Yesham twantagatam papam jnananam punyakarmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bhajante mam dridhavrataha. After many, many births of executing pious activities, when one is completely freed of all contaminations and from all illusory dualities, one becomes engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So that's after many, many births of pious activities and after being freed from all contamination of sinful activities. So that's a long time. But one who comes in contact with a pure devotee of the Lord, they can immediately, by the mercy of the pure devotee of the Lord, and by his nectarian instructions that are streaming from his moon-like mouth, the river of instructions that are streaming from the lotus mouth of the pure devotee, the conditioned soul in this material world can get the clue. He can get the hint that, okay, this world isn't my home. I'm not the enjoyer. That's Krishna. He's the supreme enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of all living entities. So it just makes sense for me to act for his satisfaction and his pleasure. That's my real happiness, is to act for Krishna's happiness. So the living entity conditioned in this material world can get the clue by coming into contact with the pure devotee of the Lord. And in this way, he becomes fortunate. That verse that I keep only quoting, half of Kona Bhagyavan Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Beach. It's after traveling in this material world, up and down, all different species of life, suffering, eating all kinds of abominable things in different species of life. Eventually, the living entity can become fortunate by coming in contact with the Lord's pure devotee. And this happens by the mercy of Krishna. When Krishna sees that, okay, this personality no longer wants to be rebellious and try to be the supreme, try to be something that he's not. He wants to be himself. He wants to be a pure servant of Krishna. Then he helps the living entity come back to their natural position, which is to be eternally engaged in Krishna's service without any interruption or any ulterior motivation. So Krishna, by his mercy, one gets the spiritual master. And then by the mercy of the spiritual master, one can get Krishna. And the metaphor is there that it's like being saved in the form of, if someone is stuck in a well or in the ocean, wherever, and someone in a safe position throws down a rope, and that rope is the instructions of the spiritual master. And then this person in the dangerous position, he can grab onto that rope of the instructions. And I don't have my bead bag, but I could show you in the bead bag, that rope is there. So we grab onto this rope that's thrown down by the spiritual master, that we've taken a vow that, okay, I will chant 16 rounds and follow the 4 regulative principles. And we hold on to that rope. And like this, he can save us, bring us back to Godhead. So that's our part, is to hold on very tightly to this rope of the instructions of the spiritual master and the vows that we have taken at the time of initiation. And in this way, we can get out of the contaminated condition of material life and be situated in our eternal, blissful, fully conscious position of spiritual life, which means of service to Krishna. So that's the fortunate position of the living entities, is to come in contact with the devotee of the Lord and take to their instructions. And we hear many examples of this throughout the scriptures, how, and sometimes we see different examples, like in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, of eternally liberated souls. They're never contaminated, but still they enact this pastime for our benefit, and we see how they give up material life, this samsara, the cycle of birth and death. What is that? There's another word for this, like mundane home life, like samsara ananda kupam or something like this. They give up this mundane family life and entanglements in this material world and leave it behind to fully engage in the service of the Lord and associate with the devotees of the Lord. So we see in the example of some of the 6 Goswamis, when they leave behind everything to engage in Krishna's service, like Raghunath Das Goswami. And we hear how they, in the Shad Goswami Astakam, we hear how they were very wealthy, had aristocratic relatives, nice position in society, learned, looked up to by others, and still they leave it like it's nothing. They're not interested in it. They leave behind all these opulences of material life to fully engage in the service of the Lord. They left behind all of this wealth and opulence and nice position to accept Kopina Kantasars. What is it? There's the verse in the Sad Goswami Astakam that explains that they left behind all this to accept a kopin, a cloth, just a single or 2 pieces of cloth or a few pieces of cloth to wear. And like that, they give up all these things just to have that as their possession. Why? Because they're getting actually a much more valuable possession and a much greater wealth. And what is that? That is the wealth of love of God, Prema Maharta Mahan, the highest, most valuable type of wealth in this world. So that wealth is given to the conditioned living entities in this material world by the mercy of the devotees. And the storehouse of that wealth is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Lord Chaitanya and his associates, they have appeared in this age of Kali to break open the storehouse of love of God and distribute it widely and freely, making no discrimination. Anybody is eligible. Anyone who has the human form of life is eligible to receive the wealth that they have taken from the storehouse of love of God. So that storehouse of love of God is here in the form of these Krishna literatures, and we break them open all the time, all over the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Many storehouses of love of God are being sent to many temples, and they may look like a box of cardboard, and you might think there's not so much wealth in there. That's cardboard. It's made of some trees or some paper. But when that storehouse of love of God is broken open and it's distributed freely to all the, freely meaning without any discrimination, anyone is eligible to get it, but they should give some remuneration for it, of course. But when it's distributed freely to all the living entities, then we can practically see how, okay, this is not actually a cardboard box, but this is a great treasure house. There's more wealth in this box than all of the gold, all of the jewels, in any sort of king's treasury. Because when this storehouse is broken open and its contents are distributed, then there's unlimited value, and unlimited opulence is immediately very perceivable to the distributor and to those who are receiving it and to everybody involved. The living entity, anyone in this material world who's clearly suffering, instantly becomes happy when this storehouse of love of God is broken open and given to them, or they're giving it to another person, or they're witnessing it in some way. There's nothing more relishable. And so therefore there's that verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam that explains how, it's like the second verse, Nigama Kalpa Tayor Palitam Palam. Here, I'll find it. Second verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Nigama Kalpa Tayor Galitam Palam Sukha Mukad Amrita Drava Samyitam Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Mahoraho Rasika Bhuvi Bhavukaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadev Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. With great respect and attention, one should receive the message and lessons imparted by the Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's very relishable. It's the mature fruit of the desire tree of the Vedic literatures. The Vedic literatures, they're described as a desire tree, meaning that one can go to a desire tree and get anything they want from it. So in the same way, the Vedic literatures, they're fulfilling all the desires of the living entities. And what is that real desire of every living entity? It's love of God, pure devotional service. Because in that state, in that condition, one is actually fully satisfied. So this is what is contained in this. This is the juice that's in the Srimad Bhagavatam, is pure devotional service. And anyone who receives or distributes or somehow comes in contact with the Srimad Bhagavatam tastes that fruit. That's the potency of these Krishna literatures. They might look like books. What they're coming in might look like boxes, but actually they're the most valuable jewels. They're the most tasty fruits, and they're contained within the most opulent storehouses or treasure chests, not just boxes. So that's what the pure devotees of the Lord are giving. They're giving Srimad Bhagavatam. They're giving Krishna Katha. They're fulfilling all the desires of the living entities, as we say every morning when we're offering our respects to the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They're fulfilling all the desires of the living entities. The living entities in this material world have unlimited desires, of course, for material ideas and material satisfaction. But the more they chase after these material ideas and material desires, the less and less satisfied they become. But when they actually engage in the service of Krishna, all of their desires are fulfilled, because that's the natural position of the living entity as Jivara Srupahoy Krishnara Nityadas, an eternal servant of the Lord. So by coming in contact with Krishna, all the desires of the living entities are fulfilled, and we see that's what happened here with these queens who are trapped in this prison of Narakasura, or this house of the demon Narakasura. All these princesses are kidnapped, and since they've now been taken away from the home, away from the custody of the father, they're unprotected. Nobody will accept them now who would agree to marry them in the Vedic culture, because now their position is very much what's it called, like doesn't look like a pure position. It looks not good if a woman is away from the protection of her father or husband or grown-up sons. Then no one actually knows her situation, so no one would agree to marry them. But Krishna knows the hearts of all living entities, and he knew that these are actually his pure devotees who don't want anything else besides him and his service. They just want to please Krishna. So Krishna accepts them as his wives, and like this, all of their desires are fulfilled. And it's nice to read in the Krishna book, we see when they're talking about how they became the wives of Krishna, many of Krishna's different wives, they talk about these great trials and tribulations that they went through, and very wonderful events that took place in order for them to become the wives of Krishna. And they're very humble about it. They don't say, okay, yeah, I went through so much, and now look how big I am. I'm Krishna's wife. I'm the big shot. But they say, actually, all these things happened, but I had faith in Krishna the whole time. And now, finally, I get to be a sweeper in Krishna's home. This is how they speak about their position, most exalted position. And they're very happy to be doing this menial service of sweeping Krishna's home, even though it's always clean, because it's a spiritual home. Like we hear in the Brahma Samhita, there's descriptions of how everything is made in the spiritual world, how many things are made of touchstone and all of these different other pure items, but still they're happy to always be cleaning these pure things for Krishna's pleasure. So are there any comments or questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna. I appreciate your enthusiasm as you speak about these topics. It's nice.
Maharaj's mercy. If there's anything good that I'm saying, then it's Maharaj's mercy.
It's all been fantastic. So, I mean, I really appreciate your words. But naturally, my mind, or my false ego rather, becomes pretty troubled when you speak about how we're not the enjoyer. That's something I still haven't really come to terms with. So, and this is a point that I kind of, I stray away from as I preach. And rather I talk about how actually we enjoy so much when we practice devotional service through this reciprocation that we receive with Krishna. So this is something I kind of, as a neophyte, I'm focusing on how enjoyable it is to serve Krishna rather than the fact that we're not supposed to enjoy. Is this something I should stick to for now? Is this understanding that you're talking about?
Well, there is one thing for judging. Also, we should see if Maharaj has any comment on the computer. But there is one thing for judging the efficiency of something in Vedic culture. There's like a saying that you can judge something by the result. So that's a helpful thing in our preaching endeavors, is to see, well, what's the result of it. If I'm speaking about this thing or in this way, is it encouraging people to, are they engaging in Krishna's service afterwards? Do they like take a book or do some service or this or that, or do they do more material activities or something? And of course, it's not like, it's not, we can't like force the conditioned living entity to become surrendered to Krishna. So we can present everything to somebody, give them all the perfect reasoning, put it all on a silver platter, how they can engage in Krishna's service, and still they might not take it. And we see examples of that even when different living entities are in contact with, we see examples even in the scripture, living entities who have maybe I can think of an example. Well, like there were some associates of Lord Chaitanya, and they're right there with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One of his servants, I'm forgetting his name right now, but he got allured by some gypsy women, and Lord Chaitanya had to go and save him from these people. So everything can be there, and still they might not take to it. You can take the horse to water, but you can't make him drink, like that type of situation. But we can still judge something by the result. And as far as for the preaching, that's nice if we can emphasize the positive aspects of devotional service, because that's true. This is their real desire, and the real enjoyment of every living entity is to simply provide the ingredients for Krishna's enjoyment, to engage in serving Krishna. Then, yeah, all their desires are fulfilled and they become satisfied. So if we can emphasize the positive aspects of devotional service and convince someone in that way to engage in devotional service, that's very nice. But the essential points of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, or like the conclusions of devotional service, that are very helpful for everyone to know, is that we're not this body, but we're the eternal soul. And that every living entity is eternally the servant of Krishna, who is God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if we understand like that, who we are and what is our relationship with God, that's very helpful. That's Krishna consciousness. So no, who am I, and who is the Supreme Lord? What is my relationship to him, and what do I do? Okay, who am I? I'm not the body, I'm the soul. Krishna is God. He's eternal. I'm eternally his servant, and it's my duty, or the thing I should do is serve him, and I can learn how he likes to be served through the scriptures and what he gives there. So that's kind of like the conclusion, like the Bhakti Siddhanta, or the basic underlying conclusions of devotional service. So if that's there, then anyone can know how to move forward then. Okay, what do I do next? Okay, that means I should engage in Krishna service and not just engage in trying to serve my body, which won't make me happy because I'm not the body. I'm eternal and I'm Krishna's servant. So if these points are there and explained, then that's very fruitful. If they're not there, it's very likely that it's not fruitful if the point that we are actually the servants of Krishna, who is the supreme, and he's the controller. If that understanding isn't there, then, I mean, you could ask what's the use of that kind of preaching if that understanding is not understood at the end of all of it, that I'm actually the servant of Krishna. Then, I mean, I would need to look into something more to figure out how it could be useful if someone doesn't understand who they are or who's God, at the end of the day. Okay, sorry, I kind of rambled a bit with that. Is there anything else? Any other comments or questions?
Yeah.
Okay. And the important thing is if someone engages in Krishna's service, they're getting purified. So if we find out somehow or other, even by hook or crook, to engage them in Krishna's service, which means chanting, hearing, taking prasadam, dancing, all these things, then they'll get purified and get to that conclusion also. Okay, Maharaj has a comment.
Oh,
Okay, we can't hear it just yet. I'll put a thumbs up when when we can hear. We have to.
all right. Can you hear me? Here. And so regarding that question, first I'll try to speak. If it doesn't come out clear, then Hare can repeat it. Is he coming back? Okay. So, you ready? So, where's Hare? Here it is, okay. In case I don't get it out good enough. Repeat it. So, in regard to that question, we're not the enjoyer, that's a fact. Anytime we try to be the enjoyer, it's only artificial. You want to repeat it?
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything, just leave it there. Speak.
We are not the enjoyer, that's a fact. Anytime we try to be the enjoyer, that's artificial.
We can't be the enjoyer because we're not meant to enjoy. Just like the foot cannot enjoy food, it's not meant to enjoy it that way.
We're not the enjoyer because we're not meant to enjoy it. Just like the foot can't enjoy food because that it's not meant to enjoy the food.
It doesn't enjoy the food directly.
It's not meant to enjoy the food directly.
We try to enjoy directly the senses or matter because we're spirit, it won't work.
If we try to enjoy directly the senses or matter because we're spirit, it won't work.
But if we agree to be Krishna's servant, that's our natural position.
When we agree to be Krishna's servant, that's our natural position.
And then we can enjoy.
And then we can enjoy.
Then we can enjoy unlimitedly.
And then we can enjoy unlimitedly.
In fact, it's debatable, some people say. Krishna enjoys most, but some people say that Krishna enjoys not as much as the devotees.
It's debatable, some say, that Krishna enjoys most, but maybe the devotees enjoy even more than Krishna.
Because they get to enjoy Krishna.
Because they get to enjoy Krishna.
That's why Lord Chaitanya, or Krishna, in his form of Lord Chaitanya, he wanted to see what the devotees were, what kind of ecstasy they were getting.
That's why the Lord, in the form of Lord Chaitanya, he wanted to see what kind of ecstasy the devotees were getting.
And we saw Lord Chaitanya, it's called Mahabhava.
And we saw Lord Chaitanya, it's called Mahabhava.
His eyes would be overflowing with rivers of tears.
His eyes would be overflowing with rivers of tears.
His hairs would be standing on end.
His hairs would be standing on end.
He'd be stunned.
He would be stunned.
All kinds of ecstasies.
All kinds of ecstasies.
So that's as a devotee, not as God.
And that's as a devotee, not as God.
So in other words, the devotee doesn't try to be the direct enjoyer, he's the indirect enjoyer.
So in other words, the devotee doesn't try to be the direct enjoyer, he is the indirect enjoyer.
And that Krishna wants us to have.
And that Krishna wants us to have.
Is that clear?
Is that clear?
Thank you.